Hey guys, hey, hello. My name is Kim Ward. Thank you so much for joining me. I love and appreciate your time and your support, truly. Whether you're here with me, with us on this live video tonight, or whether you're watching the replay, please know how much myself and, of course, my guest, who we're going to be kind of just talking to, learning a little bit more about. Hey, Sandra. Hey, Bev. How are you, ladies? Thank you for being here. So, tonight I have a phenomenal guest. Hi, Sheena. Thanks for hopping on. I had to find a quiet place, kind of away from the family right now. We just finished dinner. Hi, Crystal. Thanks for popping on. And I had to find just a little corner. So I'm like on my front porch. The scenery is not the best, but I promise you the content will be tonight. So, if you don't know me, again, hi everyone, my name is Kim Ward. I am an advocate, I'm a field advocate for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Can you guys hear me okay? Let me know. Hi, Joni, thanks for coming in from the West Coast. How's San Fran? And I see Stacy here. I did send you an invite, so I'm not sure how it works from this point, Stacy. So whenever you're ready, you're going to see that little green circular button on the live, and that will allow you to request to join the broadcast. So I'm going to kind of keep chatting. You let me know if you have any trouble. Now, as you know, as I was just kind of saying, if you didn't know about me, I have been personally affected by suicide, not once, but twice. I wonder if it's because you're on the PC. Emily, help me, please. My guest, who we are, oh, here she comes. Hold on a moment, guys. Approve. Yes, Stacy is here. So let's give this a moment. Hey, Shannon, and hey, Kelly. So I've unfortunately been a victim of the results of losing a family member to suicide, not once, but twice. So many of you were actually a part of my story back in 2008 when I lost my baby sister, who was 22 years old at the time, to suicide. Very, very, very difficult time in my life. And I took a huge stance for all families, for people who are suffering with any type of mental health illness. Um, and I locked arms with this foundation called the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Emily, it just says, Stacy, if you can hear me, it says it's trying to add you, and it's just kind of thinking and thinking and thinking. And then it said connection failed. So I'm on a phone. I don't know if it's because she's trying to hop on from her PC or if she has to be on a phone. I'm not 100% sure. I wish I knew the answer to that. I thought we could do it. Let me try this again. It just says adding right now, so we'll see if it works. And so I locked arms with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. If you haven't caught any of my lives in the past, this is our third episode of what I'm calling Strength After Suicide. And every other Tuesday, roughly around this time in the evening, depending on my guest and their schedule, I want to be, really respectful of my guest time and of your time. I know it's around dinner and everyone's kind of settling down, but we go live and interview someone who is like Stacy, like myself, possibly like you. Maybe you have lost someone to suicide. Whether you've lost someone due to whatever or to suicide, loss sucks. Okay, there's no easy way to lose somebody. That's just the way it is. Stacy, it says connection failed again. So I'm wondering if you definitively have to be on a phone. Is that possible for you right now? I'm really sorry. Um, let's just try this. Add. Yeah, let's try this way. Just so you guys know, this is live. So that's what happens with live TV and live broadcasting is there's always some kind of technical glitch. So thank you for joining us and just kind of sticking with us through this because this is a real powerful call tonight that I want you to be a part of. Hi, Shelly. Stacy. Hi, I see you. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm
Thank you
good.
so much.
Unfortunately,
We see you. We see you. You're okay.
yeah, unfortunately, my phone's weird.
So you had to jump on your phone?
Yeah, that's the only way I could
Okay.
do it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Sounds like a bad connection. Do you have headphones around by any chance?
No, I don't. I have a
That's okay. We
Bluetooth.
can get through this. All right. So, can you guys hear us okay? Because this is really an interview that I really want you to hear. I have known Stacy since probably 2015, if I had to guess off the top of my head. We have been Facebook friends throughout these years. We've never met in person, like many of us and many of you who are here, and you build such bonds and such connections with people. And when I learned more about Stacy, and thank you, Emily, and Stacy's mission, I really wanted to get her on here so you could hear her story and her voice, because she is a complete badass. All right, I'm okay with saying that. So Stacy is the executive director for Speaking to the Heart podcast network. And I want to give you guys a massive shout out. I know with our kids and with our family members, like we're not supposed to have favorites, but the PTSD bunker gear for your brain with Carl Waggett is by far my most favorite podcast and Facebook Lives. And I love being part of that group. So Carl talks a lot about anxiety, depression, PTSD, all that good stuff. So if any of this resonates with you tonight, I'm going to ask you to reach out to Stacy and see how you can kind of learn more, get involved there. So let's jump into it because I promised you I wasn't going to keep you long. So thank you for being
No
here.
worries.
Honestly, this is huge, and you guys who are watching, thank you for your time as well. So if you could please, just tell us about Stacy. Let us know whatever you're willing to let us know about you. Let us kind of tune into who Stacy is.
Well, I guess, for me, um, when I was growing up and stuff like that, you have a lot of pressure, with different students and stuff like that. And I was kind of an oddball. I had braces and glasses, and I was kind of dorky, and I got picked on a lot. But I had a really good family unit where, if something was happening, I'd say, hey, this is going on. And they would tell me, well, is that who you are? Well, and I would say, no, that's not who I am. So they would help build me up. So that way, if I went to school and somebody called me a nerd or Betty Four Eyes or whatever it was that they wanted to call me that day, I knew I wasn't those things. So that was really helpful. And then in school, as you get into high school, that's a lot of pressure there. And I think that was my first time I was exposed to somebody that had completed suicide. It was a friend of mine that I had not known very well. I guess I can't say really a friend per se, but it was a person that I had known. And instead of him, going to somebody and talking about it, he decided that the shotgun was the way to go. And a lot of us students were devastated, because it happened, in our class, and there wasn't really a lot at that time because I'm, kind of dating myself here back then. You didn't have the resources available to you where somebody would talk to you about, how do you feel about this? What's going on? What happened to that person? They kind of kept it quiet. So, we didn't have a lot of adults to go to. We had the guidance counselors, but they really didn't know how to handle it either. And one of the things that kind of got me interested in helping others was like, because I thought, well, that could easily happen to somebody in my family. So I went ahead and thought, I'm going to take psychology class. And psychology class was very interesting because it does get into depression, it does get into anxiety, but it doesn't tell you how to deal with it. It just tells you the clinical and the scientific portions of it. And so that was helpful in some ways, but not really, because you kind of as that as you're growing up, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to be these things. And of course, I became a cosmetologist instead. So that was kind of a whole different realm. But you're still kind of the person that everybody tells something to, when
Absolutely.
you're doing that in the school. So when I was going to school for cosmetology, I had met the guy who seemed, kind of, and he was funny, he was charismatic, he was very interesting, but there was, a part of him that was sad. And that was intriguing because I thought, here's this guy, he's really working hard and he's trying to make things right. And so we started dating, and I didn't see the signs at the time that he was depressed or sad. He was very quiet about his
Mm.
problems. We would talk a little bit about his past, but he didn't go into a lot of detail. And so, I talked to some of the family members, asking a little bit of pieces, trying to find things out because he wasn't living at home and he was a foster child that was kind of a bad boy, I guess you want to call it. He was in a lot of trouble and he went and did some things that weren't all the greatest, but I looked past that because he was a very heartfelt person. He felt more deeply than others. And if something happened to him at work or whatever, he would take it to heart and he would cry
Mm.
and people would make fun of him. And I said, you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they see you cry. I said, you're just stronger because you can work through those tears. You can work through that. And we talked about, how he could go back to work and it wasn't working very well. It- he uh, he had a really hard time adjusting to change, because of his things that changed. And I knew that he had some emotional issues, but I didn't know the extent until after his suicide. And at that time we had been we got married, and then later I was pregnant with our child. And it was during that time he was very, very stressed out and wasn't talking to me, was getting into trouble. And, I didn't know that those were signs, because nobody says, hey, these are the signs of suicide. Somebody's getting in trouble. It's kind of like self-hatred to yourself. You're doing all these things because of the fact that you're not happy with yourself. So you're looking for a negative reaction in some way to be noticed. And unfortunately, at that time, I didn't know that's what that was. I wanted to help him as much as I could. But again, I'm pregnant and I'm emotional. I have no idea what's going on. So we're both crying and we're both trying to figure things out. And it just made it very difficult. It made it very difficult to help him. And sometimes when he would get into his depression, he would leave. I wouldn't even know where he was. And I'd have to find out from friends, hey, have you seen Mike? Where is he at? What's he doing? And then they would say, oh, he's okay. He was at a party and kind of got wasted and we had him stay. And that was devastating to me because it's like, well, why did he have to do that? Because he could have came to me. We talked about everything, but he just didn't feel that he could. He felt that, that some of his burdens were too much for me to handle, and didn't want to get on that path of, me being the person that's always rescuing him. And, and after we had gave birth to our son and we seemed to things be okay, his first attempt to suicide was when he was at work. And, I was doing my daily mom thing, just playing with my son and trying to, teach him to walk and stuff. And I get this phone call and they said, I just want to let you know your husband's in the hospital. I'm like, well, what happened? Well, they said, well, he got his foot stuck in the elevator shaft. I'm like, well, how do you get your foot stuck in an elevator shaft? And to me, that's odd.
Right.
How does that work? So so I get there. I go to the hospital and I find out, that he had damaged his foot, not horribly, but enough to where it was going to have to be cast and he had stitches. And so I went to him. I said, "What happened? Why? How do you get your foot stuck in an elevator?" I said, "Can you please explain that to me?" I said, "Were you carrying things?" I said, "Did you just not see that your foot didn't make it all the way in?" And he just said, "I don't know what I was thinking." He goes, "I was going to jump because it's a grain elevator type thing. And what he was going to do was he was going to stop it in between floors and jump off, but it didn't work out right. And so he got his foot stuck." And I thought, well, and I told him, I said, I love you and I know I care about you. What can I do to help you? And he just said, oh, just don't worry about me. I'll be fine. And I said, well, do we want to talk about it? You want to get counseling? And they offered him counseling, but he didn't want to go. He just refused because he said talking about it wasn't going to help him. And had I known about coping skills at the time, I could have done that, but I didn't know at the time. At that time, I was I was 21 years old. And at 21, I'm not that, I don't know.
You
I
barely
wasn't
know
bright.
yourself.
There's probably a lot of bright
You
ones.
barely know yourself at
Yeah.
21.
Yeah. And you're just figuring
Yeah.
things out. Plus you have a child that you're trying to raise too. And and he wasn't talking at the time, because babies don't, they just do their
Hmm.
googly garb. And so I didn't have to worry about it. He just know that his foot was hurt. And that kind of helped out a lot with his recovery, and we would talk a lot about it and try to get to the heart of the matter, because for me, it wasn't hard for me to ask him questions because we were really, we had that open communication, but we did it. And um, then there was a time where we were having marital problems and he'd be gone or I couldn't find where he was. And, and I would talk to him like, what is going on? Why are you secluding yourself from me? So he would do the isolation. And I didn't know that him running away from me was isolation. I thought it was me that did something wrong in the relationship. I thought, well, what did I do? Why am I causing him to run away? Am I being too needy? Am I asking too many questions? Is it too much? Is it me being home with our son, raising him? Is that putting pressure on him? And he wouldn't talk to me. In fact, one of the nights he tried to flip his car on the interstate as he was driving, and I got a call from one of his friends stating that he had flipped his car. And I said, "Is he okay?" And they said, "Well, he's in the hospital." And I'm like, "Okay." So again, he was in the hospital, and he tried to attempt again. I said, "You have a son to think about. What's he going to do without you?" And he's like, "Oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine without me." And I said, "Oh, no, he won't." So I made sure that I was able to bring our son in and he got to see his face, and that helped out a lot. But I wasn't happy. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I was pretty mad, because I'm like, how could you be thinking this way? What is wrong with you? And, and it was kind of the wrong terms to use, but I didn't know what else to do because I didn't have anybody to go to. Nobody really knew what to do for him because he wasn't talking. He wasn't, responding. And then how you say keep talking until they
Hmm.
listen to you. Well, he turned his ears off. He decided just to turn them off. And one time when I started working, and I had my son at the babysitters. I was at work and he came up and he's like, "Listen," he goes, "I'm just really stressed out. I think it's just best if I just take a few days reprieve." And I'm like, "Okay." I was upset. That made me mad. And I said, "What about our son?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I'll still see him. Don't worry about that." So I'm like, "Okay." So we try to set up arrangements so he can come and see his son. And we went to the park one day, and this was right before April Fool's Day. Mind you, it was 2 days before. And he went and played with them, had a great time. And everything seemed fine. They were playing, they went on the swings. I was watching. And he said goodbye, but I didn't know that was going to be the last goodbye. I had no idea that that was going to be the last goodbye. And so the next, couple of days I didn't hear from him. Like, well, he's probably, doing his thing. I'll hear from him soon. And then I went to work, and it was April Fool's, and I didn't think much of it because he was a prankster. So I had the chaplain and a police officer come to my work, and they said, they said, "Mike's your husband?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, we have something to tell you." And I'm like, "What?" And they said, "Well, wanted to let you know that 2 o'clock this morning that your husband had jumped off a 15-story building downtown." And I'm like, "Oh, right." And they said, "Yeah, and he made single bounds and he's wearing a cape." That type of thing. I was making fun of the
Yeah.
situation because I couldn't believe that what they were telling me. And my boss came over and said, "Stacy, I think you need to go upstairs." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go upstairs and they tell me I was in shock. And she said, "I heard it on the radio. I didn't know that was your husband." And I'm like, wow, I was in shock. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know how to react because I thought, well, how
Hmm.
unfair. Here's our son that he loved so much and he played with, that my son was missing. And he just went ahead and decided it's time without even asking me or talking to me. And no note, nothing. There was nothing. There wasn't even a goodbye. There was no closure. And I don't even think that would make it better, but it would have. I don't know if it would have helped or not. But it just leaving us like that really was hard. It was devastating. And here's my son. At this time he's 2.5, and he is talking. He is saying dad. He is saying mom, and he's wanting to know where
Hmm.
dad is. How do you explain that to a half-year-old? It's not easy. And you just have to say he's on vacation or he's, doing something. And, after a while they forget. He didn't forget wholeheartedly, but because like when by the time he was getting up in school age and we were going to school and they were asking, to do Father's Day stuff, he's like, well, what about my dad? And I'm like, oh, well, don't worry about it. Just don't worry. And I said, I'll be your father. Just have me for Father's Day. And I got by with that until he was in third grade, third or fourth grade. I think it was third grade. And they wanted him to they were having a father son dinner. I'm like, yeah, great. So I had that night, I thought, well, I got to figure out something to do. And I don't remember who I talked to. I talked to somebody. So it's been such a long time, ago that happened. But I talked to somebody and they said, well, you try to put it to him in terms that he'll understand. So I'm like, all right. So I'm trying to think about a way to do it that doesn't make him feel like he's the cause of the problem. So I sat him down and I said, honey, I said, your dad loved you very much, but his mind was sick. His mind was not where it needed to be. It was unhealthy. And so he died. He died a tragic death. And I said, by his own choosing. And so we talked a little bit about it and he was in tears and he was distraught. And I said, you know what you can do in memory of your dad for Father's Day? I said, make him a card, make him a presentation. So I asked the teacher, um, I had called that night because I had called her and said, I just explained to my son, she didn't know this either. So I explained to her and she said, oh, most definitely, he can do a presentation. And so he just did a small tribute to him, just an old picture of him and them. And he had said that. And now that opened up a whole new realm for the whole entire class because none of the children had heard about suicide. So that was a tough thing right there because the teacher took me off to the side and said, he shouldn't know about these things. And I said, why shouldn't he know about these things? Things happen like that. Just because he's the only one in the class it's happened to, I can guarantee you there's other people out there. So I tried to get them to do, a small thing about it, but they
Hmm.
refused. They refused to do it. So he was starting to show signs of problems and, mental anguish. So I got him into counseling. I got my son into counseling and tried to get him to understand things. But then I found out that my son had some mental illness and emotional problems. So from there, I decided, you know what, I am going to educate myself, as much as I can. I got a book that was called Wright's Law, and they have a website called wrightslaw.com that helps you with IEPs and helps you set them up. So that way, if you're trying to fight for your child to have a certain education, so they're not streamlined into, special ed where they don't
Hmm.
belong, then Wright's Law tells you how to get around those and how to get people that will represent you that's for the best need of your child. So I learned all those ins and outs. And, long story short, I got on the Nebraska Support Network. I got involved in NAMI for a short time. And then the one that, the ASFPA got involved in that. And I did some speaking events, on a parent's perspective of a child that has emotional issues and how to talk to them and how to express feelings. Because we had to talk a lot about feelings because children tend to bottle them up. They don't know what those feelings are. So when my son would go to me and he said he was angry, and I said, "What are you angry about?" He was like, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, you're angry about something." And I said, "We don't." So I would just, get out puppets or we make things or we draw things. So I would use colors. And I said, "So if you were angry right now, what color are you?" And it wasn't always blue. It wasn't always certain colors. So the thing was is that we worked around a way to communicate and that could communicate to his needs because I couldn't do it for his father. His father was, somebody I wasn't able to say, can you express it with colors or puppetry or commercials, sing a jingle. Maybe I'll
Hmm.
understand it. But that's how I got around to doing all those things and getting involved because of the fact that there was people, other than the two that were close to me, because I had hospitalized my son twice for suicide himself, and that was heart wrenching to watch. um, but I wanted to make sure that he felt loved, that he was needed, and that no matter what, we're going to make it together. There is no reason to, take a different way out when there's a different way in. And I said, let me back into your life to show you how you can get there. So that's kind of the story, the short story of
I
me.
love that you said that. There's a different way in, and that's so critical. And I really want to give you kudos from a mom to a mom. So, for you who are listening, I have so many takeaways from your story. And I actually didn't know any of that about you. That's the cool thing is like when I do these interviews, I don't send my guests a scripted thing of questionnaires of what I'm going to ask you because I want this to be from the heart. And that's what that was. So, from my standpoint as a mom, my son was about 7 years old when my sister took her own life, and they were very, very, very close. And I didn't have the heart to tell him. I hopped on a plane. I had somebody watch him so I could go to her services, and I'd call him from Florida. We lived in New Hampshire at the time, and I'd say, Auntie Katie's really sick right now. Meanwhile, I'm looking at her in a casket. I couldn't tell my son. So communication is huge. And
Hmm.
we grow through our lessons and we learn from different things. So I think you did the best that you could do for your son, and that's absolutely amazing. Also, for people who are silently struggling and may not be at the point where you're contemplating suicide or anything like that, but you are struggling with anxiety, you do have depression, you have those moments of isolation creeping in. What would you say to
Hmm.
those people, the people who are here right now, whether live or watching the replay later? What can they do to know you're not alone? There are people who care and who love and who will work with you through that other way in.
Well, when somebody is isolating themselves, don't give up on them. Let that person that's in isolation keep getting to them, keep talking to them, because you're going to eventually ask the right question. Eventually, you're going to ask that right question that's going to get them to say, you know what? They do care about me. They're not just because see, one of the things with isolation and people get irritated with is that somebody will keep onto them and onto them and try to help them through it, but then they're gone and then they're not there for them the rest of the way. So what I would tell people is if you're going to be there for the short term, be there for the long term, because don't just lend out a hand and say I'm going to be there for you, and then when they feel better, go back to your doing your whatever you were doing before, because once they trust you and they're talking to you, they do count on you. They do want to, when they've got that, communication built with you and you're not there, then they're going to think they're alone again. So one of the things that to me is a takeaway is when somebody is feeling isolated, be in their face, get into them. Even if they get mad at you, just say, I know you're mad at me right now. And that's fine. You can be mad at me. Let's be mad at me together, and at least it gets them talking, because then you'll get to the source of the matter. But then once you do get them talking, don't leave them alone. Keep checking in with them, because even the strongest person that you think is doing amazing, oh well, she got out of her depression, boy, she's doing what? No, depression doesn't work that way. Depression isn't something that goes away. You can keep it at bay and you can cope with it, but it's an everyday struggle when you actually have depression and you actually have anxiety. I mean, I suffer from that myself. I mean, there's times where I get really low and depressed, but I've learned to seek people out that I know will lift me up, as opposed to isolating myself. Because the people that care about me, that know I isolate myself, they're in my face. They're
Absolutely.
asking, "Hey, what's up? What's going on?" And if I have anxiety, I've learned that for me, what helps me with my anxiety, for me, my anxiety is more of self-negative talk, and that puts me in an anxiety phase. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And so I have to remind myself I am capable of doing this, because I don't like the word can't. I always say you're capable. You are capable. If you're incapable of doing something, I can teach you how to be capable. So that's all something that I always would like to, keep people in their mind that, yeah, maybe you can't jump 5 feet in the air, but you're capable of it if somebody teaches you. Now, if you're not capable of doing it, that is not your blessing. You just got to think of it that way. Everybody can sing, but maybe not on key, but it's not their
I'm
blessing.
tone deaf, but I do it
Everybody has
anyway.
their own skill. Exactly, but you still enjoy it, so you're not
No,
incapable,
I
you can
suck
do
at
it.
it, but I'm capable. You're
So
right.
yeah, so the thing is that when you're in isolation is don't let that person down. Don't and if you can't be around them because it's pulling you down, then you seek somebody out to help lift you up so you can lift the other person up. But I also say too is that it takes a tribe, to make a village, because a lot of people want to say, oh, it takes a village. No, you have to find your tribe to create that village. Because if you don't have a leader, where are you going to be? You're going to be looking at a bunch of villagers just like you, and you're not going to get anywhere. So you want to look at somebody that's a little bit more more uplifted than you. So that way, when they're down, it's vice versa. I mean, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of like the world. You got to be able to look at it to where you complement each other. I mean, there's some people that don't compliment the other person, but they compliment the heck out of that one. So just find your tribe and know which circles that you can go into. But if anybody's negative, if you have a negative tribesman, just know that they don't belong there. Just cut the cord. Just keep moving on because you
Those are
don't need it.
awesome, awesome, awesome tips. And from somebody personally, myself, who severely depressed, like clinically depressed, fought it for many, many years, severely over medicated. I was that person who would do the negative self talk, and you bury yourself in a deeper hole, and it's very, very hard to get out of. So, those affirmations, that positive self talk, it might seem silly, you might seem a little foolish, but if you can do it and do it consistently and don't stop, that is a huge, huge piece to kind of renewing your energy and your space, and then finding those people who you are safe with, who you can talk to, who you can rely on, who you can count on. And that tip that you gave, pulling someone kind of out of their really bad space, but sticking with them through the long term, that's huge. That is, I for myself,
Mhm.
that's not something I would have thought of. So thank you for sharing those tips. And speaking of tribe, I want to talk about your tribe for a minute and what's going on over there at Speaking to the Heart. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, well, tonight we've got Christopher Rausch. He's going to be on tonight. I don't know if you know the
Chris
Kick-Ass
is
Motivator,
great.
Unstoppable.
Yes.
Yes, he's on tonight. So, I mean, he gives you the raw and unscripted version of, how to get out of your self-proclaimed crap, rise yourself above. He's kind of that little voice that says, no, you
Mm-hmm.
can do this. Get off your butt and go get in there and do that. Don't sit there and self-pity. So he's really good about that. And then tomorrow we've got Shane. He's going to be doing Motivated Strength,
Nice.
and he's got a series going on this week. Kind of ties everything into, that you are more than what your illness is. You are not your illness. We've got Cassie. She's a Saturday. She has chronic issues. I mean, she's got chronic pain and chronic illness, and she is phenomenal. She just, if anybody can go over to Cassie's cultivating, chronically cultivating. She had a podcast over the weekend about you are not your illness, and about how her sister was helping her being a caregiver, and how not to feel like a burden to the ones that love you, that are trying to help you, and having open and honest communication. It was a phenomenal podcast. I really recommend anybody that has any chronic pain or chronic illness to really go and watch that video, that podcast, because it's phenomenal. And then we had Travis Barton on yesterday, and he has a lot of different guests that comes on with a little different kind of takeaways of, if you're an entrepreneur such as yourself. He has some phenomenal tips on, how to rise above and keep going, and, looking for different directions. And he does some meditations, so there's a lot going on. We've got some other shows that are going to be coming up down the pike. So we've got a lot of different shows going on, but we also have support groups too. I think that, that we've got several support groups. People can go in, ask questions. With our hosts that we have when they do their live shows, we always ask, hey, ask questions. What do you want us to talk about? Because we're more than happy, to speak on those things, about that. So if there's something on somebody's mind and they want Shane to talk about something, Chris to talk about something, or Travis to talk about something, by all means, put that in our group. Cassie, she would love, to have feedback and, any questions or concerns that you have. They're all phenomenal people. They're very
I
helpful.
agree. I'm actually in most of those support groups. And, when you introduced me to Speaking to the Heart podcast network, it was like, oh my gosh, I am so grateful to have found this and to have something like this that exists. So I did create a taggable link right above in the description of this video. So if you click on that link right there, Speaking to the Heart, you can actually go right over to their page, check out all of their amazing hosts, amazing speakers. Stacy is the executive director under Shane Schultz. They're just the most incredible group of people. So you guys keep doing the most phenomenal work that you are currently doing, because you're giving hope, you're raising the bar, you're raising expectations, and you are helping so many people, myself included. If one of the hosts are on,
Wonderful.
I will literally, if I'm driving, I'll put it on. I can't watch it, but I can listen, and I'll be driving along my streets at
Yeah.
9 p.m. listening. And if I have guests in my car, like my dad was driving with me during a couple of Carl shows, and, oh, is this that guy Carl again? I'm like, yeah, it's Carl. So we're huge fans over here. So guys, go to the podcast page, give them some love. So much greatness and support over there. And as you know, if you're looking for more help, more, if you're silently suffering, I also have a support group. It's a very, very safe haven. Please send me a private message if you're looking to get into a group like that, and you are always more than welcome to reach out to Stacy herself. Please do so. So I'm gonna leave you with this, but do you have any last final words of tips, advice, wisdom, love, anything that you want to share before I let you go?
Well, I do. First above everything, you should love yourself. And if you have a hard time loving yourself, when you're in a good mood, write down all the things you love about yourself so you can remember those
Mm,
for later when you're not feeling it. Write down all your favorite affirmations, all your favorite movies, and your favorite music. So when you are in that slump, you've got your go-to. And I don't care if it's a scent or if it's a silly song. Um, Sometimes I think that the silly songs are the ones that lift us up the most. I go back to Sesame Street if I have to. C is for cookie. That's good enough for
it's the
me.
Hanson
And
brothers for
so,
me. Mm,
eh,
bop.
yeah. Well, right, right. But see, for me, if I want to laugh, I will get into like the Sesame
Yes,
Street stuff, because it's so silly that it
I
makes
love
you
it.
laugh. So find your laughter when you're in a good, healthy mindset. So that way, when you're in the unhealthy mindset, you've got your
Love it.
go-to. And so those are the kind of things that I would say is that would be a good takeaway is that, and write down your people, write down your lifting up people. And then like use your group, the group that you have, so have them reach out to you, have them reach out to us. We're all in this
Yes,
together. If they think about it, we're all in the same world and we all have the same goal. Let's use our resources and connect. And so that way we can be a more healthier society.
absolutely. So Stacy has a really, really great charitable organization that both she and Speaking to the Heart Network back. So once we end this, I'm going to go back and just add the link to that charity. So if this touched your heart at all, and you can donate even just $1, please come back, click that link, make that donation, and help us continue to spread this mission through and through, because no one deserves to suffer. If you're suffering silently, or if you're having, some stressors in your life where other people don't understand, whatever it is that you're going through, there's always somebody who is more than willing to listen and help you through your journey. So please, please reach out. All right. Stacy, thank you so, so much for this. I just
Thank
love you and
you. Thank
keep
you
up the
for
great
it.
work.
Love you too. Well, you too. Thank
All
you so
right. Thanks,
much.
guys. Thanks for being here.
Uh,
Bye bye.